Welcome to the Brad and Taylor Show. Today we have Gary Newton.
You're listening to The Brad and Taylor Show, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs to pursue their passions. We're sitting down with some of the best to learn how they got started and some lessons they learned along the way.
Hey Gary, how's it going?
It's going good, guys. How are you?
We're good.
We're doing good. Well, let's get the show started. What exactly do you do?
So, my name is Gary Newton, and I'm a real estate broker here in Lansing with Remax Real Estate Professionals. The fancy term for what I do is I help with the acquisition and sale of real property. Basically, I just help buyers and sellers sell their homes. I do some commercial property and some vacant land, and some leasing, but predominantly I help with the purchase and sale of real estate. And I do a little property investing myself.
Hey, that's awesome. So when you were younger, is this what your plan for your future, or how'd you get started?
No way. Who the hell wants to be a real estate agent? That's probably the least cool job on the planet. It's up there with being an insurance salesman. You know, I always joke and tell people real estate agents we're one step below a lawyer, an attorney, and we're one step above a used car salesman. And I got buddies that are used car sales folks, so don't kill me. But you know, it's funny. You don't need us until you need us, and by then it's usually too late. Same thing with attorneys and physicians and dentists sometimes, right? But so I had kind of an interesting childhood, and I was raised by a single mom who she was born with cerebral palsy, and she was in a wheelchair. And we didn't have a lot of money, and so we kind of lived in some sketchy areas. But I got beat up a lot as a kid, and as the story goes, a lot of kids who get picked on and bullied and beat up, we wind up gravitating towards the martial arts. And so I saw this movie. It was actually, do you guys know who Jean-Claude Van Damme is? So.
No.
You guys know?
No.
You don't know who Jean-Claude Van Damme is?
I don't know. You don't either, Brad?
No, we're good with pictures. What do they look like?
Right? Yeah. I need to see a picture.
He was the God. Now I feel old. He was the Muscles from Brussels. He was in like Bloodsport and all kinds of movies. Anyways, he played a villain in this movie. It was called No Retreat, No Surrender, and it was about this kid who got beat up a lot, and he had a karate school, and his dad got beaten up by these Russian gangsters because he wouldn't join their gang. So this movie, I was 4 years old, and I said, "Mom, I'm going to be a karate master someday." And I started doing karate about a week later at a YMCA place, and I was hooked, and I was going to teach karate and be a karate teacher. That's what I was going to do for a living. And then lo and behold, I trained a lot. I was part of MSU's karate team. Growing up, I fought professionally, only a few fights, and did just a lot of international competing in the martial arts and stuff. But I realized there was no money in it. And the realization came when I realized that I was homeless right out of college. And I was surfing on friends' couches and slept in my car a couple times, and realized, man, I got to pull my life together. You know, having the ability to eat would be nice. And so, you know, I had a degree, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. And I worked in rehab at a local retirement community here, and I got fired because I was a horrible employee. And I hated it. And then I took a job as a day treatment advocate. Basically I worked at a youth correctional facility, and that was miserable too. And so I had a hard time, because I'm a night owl. I had a hard time waking up early, and I wound up oversleeping one day, and they let me go. And probably that was the reason they were looking for, because like I said, I was a bad employee. And then I stumbled into real estate, and I had a cousin who was really successful in real estate. He says, well, you know, I'm doing pretty good. I make pretty good money here. And why don't you go get your real estate license, and, you know, you can come work with me. And so I was looking at my cousin, who I always looked up to, but he had a GED. He wasn't, I had a 4-year college degree, so I must have been something special. And here's this guy with a GED who's making way more money than I am, and I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do it, right? So I went and got my real estate license in 2000. Man, it was a long time ago, 2003, 4. Um, and then I had I started working for a discount company called Assist-A-Sell, and my cousin and I rapidly realized that we can't work really well together. We love each other, but we just are not good at working together. And so I wound up staying with this company, and I became the broker's assistant. He kind of trained me, and these guys were hilarious. But Assist-A-Sell was a company. We'll sell your house for $29.95, that kind of a deal back then. That was a good deal for a lot of sellers who were looking to cut costs and whatnot. And the other realtors hated me, and I didn't know why. And it was because I was working for a discount brokerage. Started to kind of dip here in the Lansing area. And 2006, I was carrying about 40 some listings as a relatively newer agent, and not one of them sold. And I was like, oh no, what's going on? Well, and so the world always, they think 2008, right? That's when everything went to hell in a handbasket. But it was 2006 here in Lansing. And so that's kind of how I got here where I am. And I started selling foreclosures because I said, I was taught if you have to blossom where you're planted or bloom where you're planted. I don't know how it goes, and so here we are. And I've been selling real estate since about that time, and struggling for a while. And in 2006 came, I switched companies, and I guess, yeah, I don't know. How far do you want me to go with this one? I'll
That's
talk
perfect.
your ear off.
So tell us about that. How'd you get that first client?
It was given to me by the company, so I'm sure that they wish it was probably a different scenario. But sometimes people don't understand when they call into a company. This is before the advent of Zillow and stuff like that. Whoever answers the phone is who you're going to get, and hopefully you get somebody good. Unfortunately, they were stuck with me, but I had good guidance, so we got up to the closing table. But so my first 6 months, I didn't make a single sale, and the guy that called was the one we wound up selling him a house. And the only reason I was able to put the deal together is because he knew how to fill out my forms.
It's a learning experience.
Oh yeah. So anyways, that's kind of how it started. I was a horrible real estate agent till about 2012, and then I started putting it together.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn. I know a lot of people who first get into it. It's a lot more than what you think originally when you first get into it. There's just so much to learn, and every situation is different, especially when you're going through the market crashing like you did.
Well, so yeah, I didn't have a whole lot growing up, and so I was pretty much just resigned myself to being a karate bum. I was just gonna kind of, I don't know, I thought I was gonna like walk the earth like Kane from Kung Fu or something, but I just wanted to do karate, so I was gonna eventually move to Japan and figure it out from there, but I wound up not. And yeah, it was actually doing that was the best thing that never happened to me, and getting involved in real estate, especially in the time of the downturn in 2006 is when I call it, but 2008. It taught me a lot. We went from, I don't know, probably almost 3,000 agents here in this area to, I think we got down to 689 agents.
Wow.
It thinned the herd that far.
Mm-hmm.
And I hung on because, all these people were losing their homes and their cars and their identity, and they were, living high on the hog, and then they were gone, like out of nowhere. One guy went to work at a factory, another, and people, they had to do what they could to make ends meet. And here I am, I just holding on by the teeth, and I just started doing really crafty things that nobody was doing at the time, and it really started giving a lot of success. One of the first things I learned was, if you can't be good, be there, right? And you'll eventually get good. Hopefully, that's the idea, right? And so I started hosting foreclosed properties open. I would find another agent in our office. We had a couple foreclosure agents at Tommy Raines, which is the company in East Lansing I worked for at the time. And people, the phone would ring off the hook. They would list these foreclosures, and we nicknamed all the bottom feeders, but basically investors were looking to scoop these properties up and either turn them into rental properties or flip them. And so I met a lot of investors, but they were like, how come nobody else is hosting these properties open? I would do open houses at these properties. And that's probably how I got so allergic to mold, because I was in these moldy, gross houses, all the time. But people would come to these open houses, and it was like I was an auctioneer almost. And I just picked up so much business from that. And nobody else knew how I was doing business when they were struggling to get by. And I just was willing to do stuff that other people had never even thought of or weren't willing to do.
I know, speaking of the foreclosed homes that you've seen, I'm sure you've seen a handful of them. What's the worst property over the years that you've been to?
I don't even know where to begin with that question. I sold a house for $3,000 once.
Wow.
And that was pretty bad. That was a full gut job. And the guy that, I won't say any names, but I dissolved my business relationship with him after a couple of, after 2 transactions. I just thought it was really unethical after my second dealing with him. But he bought this house and he gutted it, and he flipped it and sold it, and it's still there, and the people are still happy with it. But I would never have touched a home that he bought after I learned how he was doing stuff. And then I was almost mugged in a house where there were squatters once.
Oh
So
my.
I started carrying a pistol a while ago, and so I had to call the police and hold some people in the house because they were waiting in the basement, and there was a lot of you walk into these properties and there's not supposed to be anybody in there.
Mm-hmm.
I was given a heads up by the listing agent that they had problems with squatters, and there's some drug paraphernalia found around the house by other agents. And so I was meeting an investor there, and I showed up probably about 10 minutes before he showed up. And I had I always have like an earbud, like one of the Bluetooth ear devices on. And going through this this property, I was talking to another buddy of mine, just so I had somebody with me so they could kind of hear what was going on while I was in the house. And then I had the police on speed dial at 911. And sure enough, I had my pistol, and I probably shouldn't be telling this story, but
this is a good one. This is a good one.
on the door, and I said, "Hey, Gary Newton Remax, anybody here?" And nobody answered, but I heard some people kind of. I thought I heard something scurrying around, but I wasn't sure if it was an animal, because there's always like badgers or raccoons or whatever in these homes.
Right.
So I went in, and they have these properties winterized, so there's no heat or anything, and it was still kind of warm out, but sometimes there's no lights. So, and that is usually what freaks me out the most about these properties. But this one actually had electricity on. So, and it smelled really bad because it was winterized, so there was no water to the property. And I'm walking through the property, and I don't know why I did this, but I looked in the bathrooms and everything, and it smelled horrible, but I didn't go in. And I'm announcing myself. I'm like, "Hello, Gary Newton Remax, anybody here?" Nobody's saying anything. And so I go into the basement, because that's the creepiest place to go. And I figured out, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die there, right? So I as I go down to the basement, there's like the side door to the outside that's like halfway down the stairs. So I unlock the door and I open it so that I can make a quick escape if I have to. And man, I don't know if I should be telling this story, but I go down into the basement, and I'm looking around. I didn't hear anybody, but I have my pistol out, and I have my phone with my thumb on the 911 button, or I had 911 dialed with the call button.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking around, and I'm like, "Hello, anybody here?" And nobody's saying anything. And so I look around, and so it's an old Sears home, and so there's like a there's like it's a cement block foundation, and in the middle of the house there's like a cement wall with like a doorway that goes into the other side of the basement. And there's lights. I turned the lights on, and there were lights in the basement. So I go down there and I see piles of clothes, and there's like some food that's uneaten, and I see a couple of syringes. And I'm like, oh Jesus, you know. And so I'm like kind of looking around, and there's like this half wall, because there's in these older homes they had like these places for like coal storage or whatever. And I look in the mechanical room. There doesn't seem to be anybody there, and I kind of like have my pistol, and I'm like peeking around, and there's a guy with a crowbar hiding on the other side. And I was like, freaked me right out. I made like a sound like something of like a schoolgirl, and like a and then I had to be all tough, and I'm like, hey man. And then he saw my pistol. I was like, you might want to drop that. And he drops the crowbar. I was like, I don't want any trouble, but we got to get out of here right now. And I called 911, and I had my Bluetooth on, and I said, hey, I'm here at, you know, this street, ABC 123 street, whatever. And I don't want to say the name of the street because it'll actually
right.
But anyways, and so I walk out with this guy, and I'm holding him, and as I'm going upstairs, there's two other people in the living room, and they each have like, you know, a stick or something. I'm like, oh my God, I could have been in so much trouble. And right as this happens, and this is the best part, so the police, they actually show up pretty quickly. And as I'm backing out, I've got a gun drawn on this guy, and he's walking out with me, and I'm backing out through the side door I left open. And then my client drives up, and this is a guy that I'd never met before.
Oh my goodness.
The gun on this kid. And, you know, I mean, these guys were probably homeless. They probably had their own problems going on. And I felt bad, but it was pretty scary. And as soon as the police drove up, I just said, you know, I just lowered my weapon, and put the safety back on. And then I just waited for police to show up, and I was like, I am armed, but you know, I gave them my pistol or whatever, and they're like, you're fine, you don't need to do that. And is there anybody else in the house? And I said, yes, there's. As I look up, and then I look back up, and they saw the police walking up, and they had a German Shepherd, and then they disappeared, and the police like start pounding on the door, and they were yelling, you know, announce yourselves or we're going to release the dog. And the dog just started barking, rah, rah, rah. And I was like, holy cow, I've never seen anything like this before. And so nobody announced themselves, but the dog went all the way through the house and stuff. And I was just like, man, I felt bad for these guys. And I was also terrified too, because it was a pretty scary experience. Meanwhile, my investor's like, well, so can we go look at the house? I'm like, probably want to wait a minute, man.
Did he end up getting it? That's the part I'm curious about. Yeah, he bought it. Oh my goodness.
Yep. So he flipped it, and I think he turned it into a rental property. And
Yeah.
it turns out this guy, he was an older Korean guy. He was actually a local Taekwondo teacher here at one of the martial arts dojos here. But anyways, it was kind of a fun story, but terrifying nevertheless, and probably something I could have handled a little bit differently, but I was still kind of young at the time. So.
What a way to meet somebody for the first time. I bet that's an experience he will never forget, along with you.
He's like, might need to know, go take him out of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
So I don't know, man. It was scary. It was definitely a scary time. But hey, I've had some other ones too. But some of them are really gross, and I don't want to gross people out on camera. I've ranged from opening up refrigerators, full of maggots, and homes where people have been using the bathroom, like this one actually, without utilities. And there was one home that an investor owned, and he had tenants there that were squatting. They'd stopped paying rent. Their utilities were shut off, and they were using the facilities, the restroom, for about 6 months without being able to flush the toilets.
Wow.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This is not inner city Detroit where you hear about a lot of those problems. I mean, this was just in Lansing, and in some of the more, I guess, I don't know if I want to say blighted areas. They were just areas where people just were not taking care of stuff, I guess, and didn't have a lot of money.
Well, going forward on a positive note, what is something you want to accomplish in the next year?
So last year I sold 147 homes. I don't have an assistant. I don't have buyer agents or anything like that on my team. I do everything myself. Um, and so this year I was hoping to sell 200 homes is what I want to reach this
Nice.
year. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I like it. I like it. If you had to start over today with all the knowledge you had now, what would you do differently? Because you said you didn't sell anything for the first 6 months. What would you do differently to get some clients earlier?
Well, if I had to start over and if I had the means that I had then, I probably wouldn't do anything differently. Because I experience a lot of success now. I'm pretty fortunate, but I think the one thing I would do differently if prior to starting out in real estate, I would have taken, because I mean they were basically just handing out student loan money when I was in college. I would have probably taken some of that student loan money and I probably shouldn't be saying this because I don't know if it's illegal or not, but I probably would have bought houses with it. So instead of getting into student housing and living in a dorm or a fraternity or something like that, I would have taken that money. I would have probably bought a duplex and I would have just kept buying them, because I mean prior to 2006, the subprime lending market, they were lending money to anybody and everybody. And I mean, if you had a pulse, you could get a mortgage. And um, it really would have been to my benefit to buy real estate. In fact, I probably, if I knew then what I know now, and like I said, it's hard for me to say because I don't know that I would change anything. But
Yeah.
if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have not gone to college. I would have got my real estate license and would have started selling real estate at an earlier age. Um, and I would have just self-educated, because there's a lot of stuff in college that, they force you to study. And when you're 18, you don't know what the hell you want to do in life. I mean, I started out, uh, more stories I probably shouldn't put on camera, but you guys might get in trouble, you might not. But as a young kid, I started out wanting to be an engineer, and then I found out if you joined the nursing program, you got to give breast exams to your female classmates. So I switched to nursing, and I realized it was hard work, and I was a terrible kid, by the way. Um, and I realized that it was actually much harder than some of the other stuff that I was studying. So I wound up going into family child ecology, which I don't know what the hell that was all about. And then I finally, one of my friends who was an ER doc, he put some he put some wisdom into my mind. He says, "You don't want to get a Bachelor of Arts. You want to go get a real degree." I'm like, "What do you mean a real degree?" And he says, "You want a Bachelor of Science." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so I'm like, "But I'm not any good at science." So I failed Chem 141 2.5 times. I barely made it through the third time. And so I barely slid through. I graduated with a 2.3, and I'm not proud of that. I'm proud that I graduated, but barely made it through. I used all of you have, I think, 21 credits at MSU you can use to retake classes if you failed them. I used all 21. I worked full time in college, and I I engaged in the party life and stuff like that at college too. But I spent a lot of time in the dojo and doing karate. So I was basically just really immature and didn't never went to class. But I probably would have not gone to college. So I wound up with a degree in kinesiology, as I was digressing from what I was saying. But what I would do over is I would buy real estate. I would buy income properties. And I would try to buy as many as I could prior to 2005, and then I would sell them. One of my mentors here, he doesn't even know he's my mentor. He's just a buddy of mine, but I really respect him. He actually is the owner of Keller Williams Gateway to Homes. His name's Paul, a really good guy. He bought a lot of his properties as a young kid and made a lot of money, and he sold them all. He realized in like 2004 2005 they were giving 125% loan to value loans on properties, and he's like, this is crazy, this isn't going to last. And so he listed over the course of like 2 weeks, I think he had almost 100 properties. He listed all but 2 of them and sold them all.
Wow.
And then the market crashed in 2008.
Wow.
And then he went and bought twice as many in 2008. and he'll never worry about money again for sure. But I wish I would have done something like that.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, that was good
Good for
timing
him, though.
Yeah.
Good for him. That's awesome. Well, how can people get a hold of you?
You can reach me. My phone number is 517-410-8307. You can always email me at Gary@minewtonrealtygroup.com. My Zillow rep nicknamed me the Wolf of Main Street. I always thought that was kind of funny, and the nickname just kind of stuck. So I created an email address for that called it's mymainwolf@gmail.com, and so it's mymainwolf@gmail.com. You can reach me there too. That's just kind of my I guess eventually when I create the brand Wolf of Main Street, I'll probably use that as my my moniker. But anyways, for now, I'm just Gary at My Newton Realty Group, associate broker with Remax.
I like it. That's awesome. Hey, thanks for coming on and sharing your story with us today.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for having me.
Are these working? Here we go.
Oh, there we go. I think they're working. Should we tell them?
Mine keeps falling. It doesn't like my voice.
What do we got to tell them?
Subscribe.
Subscribe. What do we got to point at? Hey, I think there's a subscription button. Like
It might be there.
might be right there too,
Somewhere.
somewhere.
Find it. It's red.
Yeah, and it's
Red.
blue. It's green. I don't really know.
It's a color.
This mic isn't even attached. Did you plug these in? Well, I guess.
I wonder if they can hear us.
Yeah. I wonder if they hear us. Well, we should probably tell them if they can hear us. We should probably tell them also give us a 5-star review for listening to on Apple. That'd be cool.
5
5-star
stars,
review.
guys.
Share it with everybody they can think of.
We won't take
But-
4 stars.
I mean, Taylor, I don't even think these are on. I mean,
No, I don't think this is working.
This is not working.